So real-time training data, again, recording them, analyzing them, finding patterns in the real time. Like you want to predict the everything in the real time. So this is difficult, right? So it also comes under big data. Again, blogs, people can freely comment on your products, your services, about the organizations. So like, mining them or like getting them is very, very important. Again, content is unstructured. That means there's no structure as such. So converting data to, regular database to store is very, very difficult. Last one. If you look at social media, that means the pictures, photos, animations that you used it with this different social media networks like Twitter and Facebook. Again, it will generate a huge amount of data. That is one thing. And it's coming fast. Every second, people generate petabytes of data, and analyzing them would be difficult. Right. With that one, we finished discussing the example. So in the next slide, what I'm going to discuss is basically characteristics of big data. Sometimes we say different perspectives. We are going to talk about different perspectives of big data. First one, the volume, the size of data. So when you say big data, size of data. Right? So more data. So remember, we discussed about building models. We develop decision trees. We develop nearest neighbor algorithm for classification problem. We have discussed so far only the classification problem, right? But when the size is big, right, what you get is you will get more accurate model. So it's always better to have more data, right? So when you have more data, you will get more accurate, model, right? For example, if you take sensor data, sequencing, remote sensing, environmental, monitoring, traffic monitoring. So all these generates a huge amount of data. The size matters, and that is the first characteristics when it comes to big data, right? So let's move on to the next one then. Velocity. So that means the speed, right? Data comes at comes at speed where you might not be able to handle it. So speed at which data is created, accumulated, ingested, and also processed, right? For example, stock exchange, real time and streaming data in Twitter, Facebook. So all this comes as fast, right? For when you take 1 second, there'll be millions of posts in Facebook, right? If you want to analyze them, yeah, the rates, the velocity matters, speed. Okay, let's move to the next one then. Then variety. Variety means you will get different types of sources. Now, when you say data earlier, sometimes you might think about, okay, recording whatever the data that you collect. No, it's not like that. When you talk about your product or service, so sometimes the data coming from what people exchange, the messages about your product or services on the social media. And then sometimes it matters how your customer visit your website and where they click, like we call clickstream data. Right? So clickstream data and social media, research data. So sometimes you perform surveys, you have reports, again, that you need to get some information. Location details, images, supply chain data, right? And signal data, videos, right? So all these comes from different sources. You have different the types are different, data types are different. Now, for example, if you type a blog, you have textual data, textual information. If you take a video, it's video data, right? So data comes from different forms, right? Coming from various, the sources. So usually when you talk about the big data, so it's not only structured data. Now, what do you mean by structured? Whatever the data that you normally store in a traditional database management systems. That means you have rows and columns. You have rows and columns. Remember, we talk about the weather data set. So data is contains a couple of attributes, right? So, and then you have number of records. So this is beyond sometimes when it comes to big data. So you have semi-structured data, unstructured data. Now, for example, if you take an email containing some, email, we can think it as a unstructured data. You have a bunch of, words, right? So how are you going to, handle this? So that is, we are going to handle with big data. Okay, so these are the three common characteristics. So if you look at any big data literature, this is what you find as main three V's of big data. We use V. But if you look at, people introduce more and more, and some people say 8, some people say, different number of, V's or characteristics in big data. But in my case, I'm going to include one more. One more, that is veracity, meaning like credibility of the source, suitability of the data, right? We will discuss later on. Sometimes majority of your time you spend on working on, improving the quality of your data, right? So many sources of data is uncertain, incomplete, and inaccurate, and you need to check the quality of the data, and credibility analysis is used to identify those. So this is also another issue when you have big data, right? So the credibility of sources and suitability of data, your problem, your modeling problem will be another characteristic. Okay, so that's about the characteristics. So we have discussed about the big data, what a big data is, and also like the different aspects, so characteristics of big data. Any questions? Any questions, please? Okay, let me give you, there's a question. So what do you mean by structured, semi-structured, and unstructured? So let me try to share some data. So basically structured means, so for example, if you take the data sets that we have used in our analysis, right? So you have a rows and columns. So you have some kind of a structure is there. So you have, for each record, you have the same number of attributes. But when it comes to unstructured, there's no such. So you have different, different values. So let me show you, like, share one image just to explain what you mean by this. Now we'll start with the structured data. Now when you say structured data, as I told you earlier, you have a set of attributes like ID, name, age, degree, and so on, right? So you have well structured. Whereas unstructured, there's no structures like that. Now if you take an email, if you take a website, the data in an unstructured form. So when you combine the two, sometimes you have a semi-structured data like XML. I don't know whether you are familiar. Even if you look at the HTML, you have some kind of a, not as structured as like what you see in the structured data, but some structure will be there. So that's the difference between the structured, semi-structured, unstructured. Now, so far when we analyze the data, we expect the data to be structured, isn't it? We expect we have to have the same number of attributes, and we have to have values for all these attributes and so on. But whereas now in big data, you can even work with unstructured data. So big data analytics, we focus on not only on unstructured but also semi-structured as well as unstructured. Now what we got talk about so far is actually what a big data is and big data characteristics, right? Now let's look at the challenges. I'm not going to explain this too much, but these are different challenges with the big data. So most challenging part gives you some bit of a dark color. Now, for example, data growth is the highest challenge when it comes to big data. So data growing fast, I told you it's becoming huge, and the velocity, the rate at which the data comes in is a problem. Right? But there are any others as well, such as data infrastructure, governance and the policies, integration, velocity, variety, as well as data compliance, regulation, and visualization. So all these effects. So you will see, I want to highlight actually most challenge is the data growth. The rate at which the data is get collected in different places is huge. Handling and the normal traditional tools, software that we have used is not capable of handling it. So that is the problem we will have. Now, for example, these are like some statistics. Again, I'm not going to discuss this, but if you look at all these different social media networks, right, you have what you call the lots of unstructured data, right? So for example, YouTube, you have a lot of videos put in now for example, it says about 100 hours of video per minute. So it's huge. Like for example, people in YouTube, they analyze this, so they have to have like big data analytics in their organizations to see. Now sometimes some videos are not allowed, right? So this is not manual. Actually manually it's not possible. Manually going through all these videos is not possible for the company. So it is always automated now. We use software tools to analyze and see whether they are appropriate or not, right? So automatically they might make decisions based on that. So same goes with other networks as well. So data growth is huge, and it's not only that, it's unstructured. I mean, you have a free text form, right? You have free text form. So so that is what that's why we need actually big data analytics to handle. Now, some example from these huge organizations who had these problems in the beginning, as well as those who had this big data analytics in their organization. Now, for example, the companies like Facebook, for example, they have huge amount of data, and then they use big data analytics, right? For example, what they say is their current storage is about the petabytes. That means 1024 terabytes is 1 petabyte. Now they have about like 300 petabytes. If you look at the latest statistics, this should be more. And process per day is about 600 terabytes. You will see that the limitation. You can't process everything within the day. And the number of users they handle per month is about 1 billion. Likes they will get about 2.7 billion. Photos uploaded per day is about 300 million. So it's huge. And normal data analytics that we have discussed is not going to work with this huge amount of data. So same goes with company like Google as well. And Google is one who actually started like some of the technologies that we are going to discuss today. So they have about what we call the 15 exabytes, and then the processing per day is about like 100 petabytes. And then especially they start with the page indexing in Google search. When you want to search a page, you know that you get the results very quickly. Why they have already indexed those data, right? So index is about 60 trillion pages are there.